Well, it's about that time again. Haven't made a video in a few days. We took a little trip out to the Smoky slash Blue Ridge Mountains, and for a few days. If you're on the North Carolina side, it's the Blue Ridge, and if you're on the Tennessee side, it's the Smokies. And it's actually like that. When we were driving back out on the Tennessee side, we could see the condensation forming the small clouds that were hanging below the tips of the mountains. And then when we crossed into North Carolina, you could look out ahead, and the ridges of the mountains actually did look blue off in the distance. So there's a reason why they're called the different names between the two states. At any rate, we're back. Well, let me begin with a few items here. A $40 million opening. Sound of Freedom breaks box offices, according to the Gateway Pundit. $40 million opener. That is a huge success for the movie Sound of Freedom. A lot of people have gone to see it. It's going to break 40 million. I mean, that's just the opener. Now, people are on YouTube and TikTok and different places talking about this movie now, and by word of mouth, it's spreading via videos. People are having different responses and reactions to it. Some are somber when they come out from the movie. Some are just adamant that people go see it. And then I've had some reactions, and some in my comment section, of some negativity toward the movie, mainly because it wasn't what the people who are making the negative comments wanted the movie to be. It wasn't exposing the deep state as far as its involvement in sex, child trafficking, human trafficking. It wasn't exposing that. It wasn't, just wasn't doing everything they wanted it to do. I'm trying to think of some of the criticism, because I don't have it in front of me right now. But basically, the other criticism was Tim Ballard himself, that he was a CIA agent and then worked Homeland Security. And that alone was enough to cause people to say, well, this is just a diversion from the real truth concerning the trafficking. It's not telling the whole story. It's not telling about high government officials being involved in it. It's not talking about the UN being involved in it. It's not talking about the adrenochrome. Excuse me. It's not talking about the adrenochrome and that type of thing. And I would say this when it comes to that. The responses of people from seeing this movie is one of shock, one of somberness, one of depression, one of it's a hard movie to watch, one of wow, this is worse than I thought. Wow, this is horrible. Why? How can people do this? What can we do to fight it? These are the responses we've been getting from a movie that those who are criticizing the movie would consider it to be soft pedaling the issue. And my thought on it is this. Because people are basically overwhelmed by this movie, many people are, I think they did it right, because you cannot slam people that hard with those hard truths that I mentioned earlier, and expect them to be functional afterwards. You've got to ease people into this. This is a very, very dark evil that we're talking about here. And the vast majority of people just cannot mentally handle that. They cannot mentally handle it. Remember in the movie, they mentioned that it, they would only choose certain people to go undercover to try and catch these traffickers because the things that the traffickers were doing was so horrific, the agents wouldn't be able to handle it. Mentally and emotionally, they could not handle it. And Tim Ballard, there was one scene where he and his partner were talking. His partner says, this is tearing me up. This is hard. I don't know if I can do this any longer. Tim Ballard told his supervisor in the movie, this is hard on me. This is tearing me up. This is most, he says, I've been to homicides. His partner, this is what his partner said. I've been to homicides, but this is different, he said. And me, I've been through to a lot of homicides when I was in law enforcement. I did, I responded to robberies, burglaries, homicides, you name it, all of the above. I worked for 3 different police departments in San Diego. I worked for the San Diego Police Department for a short time. Then I worked for the San Diego Community College Police Department. Then I went and worked for a department that is no longer in existence, the Grossmont-Cuyamaca District Police, which was the eastern side of the county, working the colleges, and then went back to the San Diego Community College Police Department. Now, the San Diego Community College Police Department policed 100,000 staff, faculty, and students. We had statewide jurisdiction. We were state officers, and we responded to calls all over the city of San Diego because we had connections we had continuing education centers all over the city. We had 3 main colleges spread across the city. We had classes that met in rec centers, office buildings, churches at night. I got called to La Jolla at a rec center one day. I would get calls to churches at night. You get called to office buildings. I mean, it was just, we were basically San Diego PD College Division, even though we were not a part of San Diego PD. But a couple of our campuses had canyons around them. And we had to go into these canyons to go after suspects or to clear the canyons out because they were part of district property. And, so the chancellor and the board, the trustees and so forth would want us to go down and make sure that their property was clear. Even though it's not public property, even though it's not private property, it was public property because it was college district. But because it was a college district, there were certain restrictions. You couldn't be there overnight, that type of thing. So there were state statutes that regulated all that. But anyway, I got into all that to say this. We did go into the canyons where migrant workers would be camped out, illegals, right? We were not allowed by our policy because it came down from the chancellor, we are not allowed to arrest people based upon their immigration status. Okay, we could not call Border Patrol. We couldn't do any of that. I mean, they'd basically fire us if we did that, which we didn't like that because when I first went into that department, we'd arrest people and hand them over to Border Patrol, and the ultra liberal element of the higher ups put a stop to that and said, no, you're not doing that anymore. Because our campuses, we want to keep our students safe from that. They had that mentality. Anyway, so we'd go into those canyons and they would bring young girls into those canyons, especially over by ECC and those areas in southeast San Diego. to service, if you will, those migrant workers. So human trafficking, human sex trafficking was occurring there, and they would get caught from time to time, but San Diego PD was busy, and we were busy. We were always busy on calls, and and of course we had restrictions on us. Not our fault. We had restrictions. The politicians restrict law enforcement because that's why a county sheriff is so important. The county sheriff is the top law enforcement in any county in the nation, and it's important that they are. And they're the only elected law enforcement official in the nation, and they should have power because the politicians many times are corrupt, or their ideology is just so far afield from being able to protect the public that they can affect the police department that way. And they can cause a police department to sway one direction or the other. They can bring pressure down on a police chief and say, look, I don't want these people outside of the FAA building filming, the cameras and so forth. You guys just need to get rid of them. And I mean, these politicians can really put a lot of pressure down on a police department to do that. And of course, it's a First Amendment. It's a First Amendment activity. I mean, there's nothing the cops can do about it. And so the cops go and they say hi. The good ones will go and say hi, and we got this call, but now we see that you're on public property and you're not doing anything wrong. So I don't have any reason to detain you or anything. So, you have a nice day, and they leave on. Now what happens? They get grief from the politicians, and they get grief from their command staff because the command staff is getting grief from the politicians, and so it's coming back down, and then briefing. The lieutenant's telling the sergeant, I want this cleaned up. And the sergeant's saying, you guys need to, clear that area. And so the officers are getting pressure from the auditors and the citizens this direction, and they're getting pressure from the higher up from this direction, and they're squeezed in the middle. And I dare say that most of you auditors out there have never stepped one day in a patrol car, and you have no understanding, no clue what an officer does. I don't care if you're a law professor. I don't care if you're a lawyer or a judge. If you've never stepped into a patrol car and done that job and had the pressure from the citizens this direction and the pressure from the command staff in this direction, and you're getting squeezed like a vice grip from both directions, and you have to do your job under those circumstances, let's see how long you last under those circumstances. If you want to change your police department, you're going to have to go after those stupid politicians that are bringing pressure down upon the police department to do the things that you don't like the officers doing. That's what you're going to have to do. Now, officers have to be able to stand up against their command staff, which means that their career might be ruined. They'll never make sergeant. They'll never make lieutenant. Or they're going to do what the command staff tells them to do, and the citizen feels harassed, and the citizen feels like their rights have been violated. But the officers that do that, you're a good officer. Take the sergeant's test next time it comes up. So you see where it goes, right? So the people are mad about the movie because they're mad that Tim Ballard worked for the federal government and law enforcement and in intelligence. Well, he must be bad. He must be a plant. This must be a ruse because, look who he worked for. So this is a logical fallacy of association, right? He worked for so-and-so, therefore he must be. That's a logical fallacy. Not everyone that works for those agencies are bad. They might work for a corrupt system, just like many teachers work for a corrupt school system, but not all teachers are bad. But they're being pressured from their administrators to teach certain things, and the things that they're told to teach might go against that teacher's moral values. And the teacher has to make a decision. Do I make a stand and lose my job? Or do I make a stand and not make tenure? Or do I make a stand and never get promoted? Or do I just go along and keep my job, feed my family, and get promoted? That's a decision all of them have to make. I left as a patrol officer. I was never promoted. I did not illegally, once I matured as a police officer and understood the fine line between a consensual encounter and a detention, because it's one thing to understand the statutes and the legality, the Fourth Amendment and the court decisions. You can understand all that and still mess up, because you're applying it to individual situations, and each situation is different. What in the mind of the officer is saying, I need to do a detention here because something's not right, something's out of place, and I need to make sure that a crime's not about to occur. That can be a legal detention. So the officers have difficult decisions to make. And they might say, I don't think I have anything here, and walk away. And then 2 minutes later, that same guy that he just contacted is holding the clerk at the 7-Eleven at gunpoint. Or pull a car over and the kid in the back seat doesn't look quite, something's not right here. But what's the driver screaming? You're harassing me. You're violating my rights. I'm going to sue you. You're a dumb cop. Cop says, well, maybe I don't want to touch this one. Next the guy goes. A day later, that girl's down in the canyon servicing the migrant workers. So you auditors, some of you are really stupid, and you don't understand the job, and you don't understand how cops catch criminals. You don't understand how that works. All you know is, I got my rights, and I can come here and film if I want to. The problem is, the only reason you're doing it is to try and make some cop look stupid and get millions of views on your video. You're being self-serving. You're not out there to help the public. That's a ruse. So anyway, I don't agree with the idea that, well, Tim Ballard worked for the government, therefore he must be bad. That's just stupid. It's stupid to say that. Not everybody that works for the CIA, not everybody that works for Homeland Security, not everybody that works for the FBI have the intention to do the wrong thing. But now that you understand command staff versus citizen, and the vice that these officers and agents are squeezed between, you understand that it takes a lot of guts to stand up against that corruption. When Serpico did it, his consequences were rough. I mean, he did the right thing, he did the brave thing, and he suffered for it. He was shot in the face because he revealed corruption in the department. So if anybody who's thinking to do that, just remember, you got to count the cost. That officer might not be corrupt himself, but he's not going after the other corruption. He might not know about the other corruption, okay? Or he might be under threat. look, you say anything like this, we're going to come after your family. Now, if somebody said that to you, auditor, look, you put that on YouTube, we're going to come after your family. We're going to take your kids, kill your wife, and we'll do something with you. Would you put that video out? That's the real world. Going after these traffickers is like that. It's the real world. They catch you, they'll do horrible things to you if they catch you going after them. So it takes a lot of guts to do the right thing. But you know what? When you have the conviction of God within you, the conviction of God's word in you, and you've got it so strong that you can't resist it, that it's a fire burning in your bosom, you're going to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. And that's what it takes. So look, I'm not with the people who are out there saying, oh, don't go see that movie, you're just supporting Hollywood or this or whatever. Hollywood didn't do this movie. Hollywood tried to squash it. So don't listen to everything that everybody's saying, folks. Not everybody understands things. Not everybody knows what they're talking about. Okay? So, yeah, like if you've never done the job, maybe you should go to somebody who does the job. Or go and do a ride-along, or be a cop for a day. Go to those citizen academies that they have around the country where they put you through police scenarios. And let's see what you would do, how well you would do with it. It's easy to point the finger at that guy and say, corruption, corruption, you're violating my rights. But you've never done the job, and you don't know how difficult the job is. All right. I just wanted to rant about that because I'm so sick of these auditors with their cameras. They're such self-righteous Pharisees, a lot of them are. And they don't know how to talk to the cops. They're always so arrogant and act like a jerk toward the cops. They're calling the cops names, they're egging them on, they're trying to get the cop to have a reaction. They do that on purpose. I don't know. If I see an auditor doing that in this town to one of my cops that I pay taxpayer dollars for, I'm going to be up in that auditor's face, and he's not going to like what I have to say. I'll tell you right now. All right. But there is corruption in law enforcement. It does happen. Cops are arrested every year. How many of you know that? Cops are arrested yearly. I worked with a cop that got arrested. I've worked with cops that got fired because they didn't do the right thing. So, anyway, here's out of the Gateway Pundit about Joe Biden. It says he seems to not have any energy. He's shot. Joe Biden has to be led across the hall at NATO summit and told to sign a book. So there's indications here that they're wanting to get rid of Biden, probably before the election. They're indicating dementia. Some people are saying, well, he's just got dementia. I don't know what to make of this. He hasn't been coherent. We all know that. Some are saying, well, that's not the real Biden. That's an actor wearing a mask. That's CGI, so forth, so on. Those are interesting things to entertain, but I can't prove any of that. I can't prove that he's wearing a mask. I can't prove he's CGI. I can't prove any of it. I can have a hunch and say, yeah, that's a possibility. Or it could be the real Joe Biden, and that this stuff is really happening. So I have to take it as a worst case scenario. This is how I was trained in law enforcement. Worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is this is the real Joe Biden. He's incoherent. He's got a medical issue that's making him where he can't function well in the office, or he can't function at all. And at that point, you wonder who's calling the shots. And if it's Biden calling the shots and he's not coherent and he's got a medical issue that's affecting his decision making, you have a bad situation, folks. And that this is the point where Congress has to act and say, look, we can't have him in office any longer. He's got to be impeached. And then Kamala Harris goes in, right? So, and you say, well, you can't say she's not coherent. You can't say she's having health problems. She just doesn't match our moral standards, and she doesn't agree with our politics. That's best you can say. But I've heard rumors that they're going to try to deal with her as well. But so we'll see what happens on all this. The Bible says that when the evil king is in power, the people mourn, and when the righteous are in power, the people rejoice. It's out of Proverbs. We can only hope that the righteous come into power. I'm supporting Trump, and here's why. The deep state is attacking Trump more than they're attacking any other candidate for office. Actually, the two candidates they're attacking the most is Trump and Kennedy. It's interesting that DeSantis is not getting that many attacks because he's gone after the woke crowd pretty hard in Florida. But they don't seem to be bothered by him running for president. But they are really, really bothered by Trump. And anybody that the deep state hates and wants to get rid of, I'm supporting, because I hate the deep state. I am not a fan of the deep state. And if we could totally destroy the deep state, that would be a day I would rejoice and I would celebrate, hold a celebration. So. All right, so that's why I support Trump. And he will go after human trafficking. He will go after sex trafficking. He was dealing with that. He was going after it when he was in office the last time. I don't know that DeSantis will. I don't know if any of the other candidates will. Now, I know that Kennedy would go after I think he would go after the pharmaceutical companies. He would go after Fauci. Which Fauci's not on the scene anymore, but he'd probably try to hold him accountable for what he did. He being Kennedy holding Fauci accountable. He would go after that side of it. According to McCarthy, the national debt soared to $1 trillion just weeks after McCarthy Biden debate ceiling deal, or a debt ceiling deal. I'm sorry. Not debate, debt ceiling deal. So remember they did the debt, they did the budget basically, and $1 trillion deficit, or as Al Gore used to say, the deficit. $1 trillion, folks. Now they always compare that to the GDP. What's the GDP in comparison to the debt? I'll tell you right now, I don't like any debt. I don't like any debt, period. I would like to see the debt go to zero and us have a surplus. But it won't happen as long as there's corruption in Washington. You cut out some of these. You cut out let's talk about some of the corruption that's in these three-letter agencies, right? Why do we need a Department of Agriculture? Why do we need the FDA? Seriously. The only thing the FDA succeeded in doing was to hurt a whole lot of people during the scamdemic. Why do we need the CDC when the CDC failed miserably during the scamdemic, and both of those agencies are in the back pocket of the WHO, which is as corrupt could be. Why do we need them? Could save a ton. We could probably pay off a big portion of that debt simply by getting rid of those departments. Why do you need a Department of Education? A federal Department of Education? Why? How much money do they take every year out of tax dollar money? Why? They take the money for what? So they could corrupt our children with perverted sex education courses? Why do we need them? Get rid of them. Yeah, I mean, you get rid of just those three right there. You could eliminate the vast majority of the deficit and pay off a lot of debt if you did it right. There's other agencies we could get rid of that nature. The FBI could be on the chopping block because they've messed up so bad, and they've done, when Trump gets back in there, and I think he will, I tell you what, I think heads are going to roll. I think there's going to be some heads rolling. And some agencies either cut to the bone or eliminated altogether or reformed to the degree that they won't be able to do what they're doing now. But we'll see what happens. All right. This video, I'm not going through Bible doctrine or anything like that. We're just hitting some of the news. So it says, Tulsi Gabbard, this is the Gateway Pundit, Tulsi Gabbard calls on Congress to ban use of harmful chemical linked to gender issues. Corporate media runs to defend the fascist transgender agenda. Of course. Let's jump over to Citizens Free Press, and they had a few interesting things. Jeff Bezos' rocket engine explodes during testing. So this has happened quite a bit between Bezos and SpaceX. Was it SpaceX that he does? Some of these rockets haven't done well. And then I can't think of the other guy's name. Oh my goodness, Soros is stuck in my head. I need to get Soros out and put the other name in. Owns Twitter. He bought Twitter. You know who I'm talking about. I don't know why my mind went blank on his name. But anyway. So yeah, we've had some rockets explode. But they do over time make progress, but I'm not a Bezos fan at all. I think he's part of the deep state. He's part of the corruption that's trying to harm humanity, in my opinion. So there was a lockdown at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Armed men was tossing TVs out of a window. Interesting. I guess he didn't like the sitcom. I don't know. Anyway, Zelensky offers blistering response to NATO rejection. Well, Zelensky is corrupt. He's as corrupt as Biden, and he's just a puppet anyway. He's just a figurehead. He does whatever the deep state, the World Economic Forum bosses tell him to do. By the way, Ukraine is. That eastern Donbass region of Ukraine is well sealed into Russian hands. Ukraine's not going to be able to take it back over. Ukraine's not going to have it again. And Russia stopped there because that's all they wanted. They wanted that eastern section of the Donbass region because mostly it was just Russians living there anyway who were pro-Russia. So anyway, Trump asked Judge Cannon to delay trial until after the election, which if that happens, they can't really do anything to Trump at that point, is because Trump would be president. It's all made up bogus charges anyway. There was a brawl at the Michigan Republican meeting. Oh, is this the MAGA versus rhinos? What is this? I mean, this needed to be on the WWF or the UFC or something. While the scuffles may be verbal as leading Republicans jostle to become the party's 2024 presidential nominee, down at the state level, things have actually turned physical, at least in Michigan, and not for the first time. So they came to blows. Oh my goodness. So yeah, wow. So they're getting pretty worked up there. I don't know what it was over or what the issue was. Mr. Chapman said he and others said the Pledge of Allegiance together in the lobby outside the meeting, after which he jingled the doorknob of the meeting room. It was then that Mark DeYoung, chairman of the Clare County Republican Party, approached the door, saw someone flip him off through a small window and opened it. Quote, he kicked me in the blank as soon as I opened the door. Man, this has gone back to the 1800s. There was an account back in 1800s where one congressman chased another congressman with a gun. He's intent on killing him. Who said politics was a peaceful sport? Oh my goodness. What else do we have? All right, we'll just do a couple more things. But anyway, I just want to talk about the movie and a little bit about law enforcement. And this, by the way, this was the ship I was on when I made 2 deployments on this ship in the Navy. It was amphibious assault. We were Gator Navy. We landed the Marines on the beach. That was our job. And then later I went into force protection. But yeah. Let's see if there's anything interesting here. Israel punches back at Biden. Oh boy, I could go off on a rabbit trail on that one. All of the folks that that support Israel no matter what, right? Israel could do no wrong, right? Because Bible prophecy, right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I could go off into the Bible prophecy realm on that one. Let's just say that I have a different understanding of Israel in Scripture and Bible prophecy than what a lot of people do. So, anyway, some people call it replacement theology. It's not replacement theology. It's understanding what Israel actually is. Israel is actually the remnant. Always will be and always has been the remnant. And the remnant are the true believers. Those who were true believers in Old Covenant Israel, they were true Israel. And the rest were just the lineage of Abraham Israel. And this is what Christ was trying to explain to the Pharisees, what he was rebuking the Pharisees about. Just because you say you're an Abraham doesn't mean that you're in good stead with God, right? You got to be born again, he told Nicodemus. You have to be a part of the true remnant of Israel. And the true remnant of Israel, from the time of God's promise to Eve that her seed would crush the head of the serpent, and from the time that he killed the first animal, God did the very first sacrifice in Genesis 3, I think it was, and clothed Adam and Eve within the skin and blood of that animal. That was symbolic of the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. And that's why I believe Adam and Eve were both redeemed. And that redemption is the true church from that point on up. And yes, Old Covenant Israel, the remnant of Old Covenant Israel was the true church in the Old Covenant, and the remnant of the church is the true church in the New Covenant. And so that is Israel. So today, the promises for Israel today are promises to the church. When he said that those who oppose you, I will oppose; those who bless you, I will bless. Those promises are now going to the church, the remnant. It's always been to the remnant. The remnant of Israel in the Old Covenant, the remnant of Israel being the church, the true believers in the church in the New Covenant. That is where the promise goes. Physical Israel over there today, people are going to hate this. They hate this because they've been taught something different. And they're going to try to say, oh, you're anti-Semitic. No, you don't understand what anti-Semitism is if that's what you're saying. Israel over there today is mostly atheist. They're mostly atheistic. But there is a true remnant in Israel today. Now, they may not be actual physical descendants from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? They're not true Hebrew. But if they're in Christ, they are spiritual Jews. And so there are spiritual Jews all over the world, all those who are in Christ. And so that is true Israel. That is true Israel. I'll leave it there. Let you guys figure the rest of it out. By the way, I'll give you one more hint. You may have been taught that the book of Revelation was written in AD 96. I don't think that's correct. Get the book Before Jerusalem Fell by Kenneth Gentry. Read it. The evidence he gives in that book for a pre-AD 70 dating of the book of Revelation far exceeds anything that can support the AD 96 date of Revelation. I believe that the later dating of Revelation is wrong. I believe it's pre-AD 70. And one thing, the temple was still standing in the book. Go measure the temple, John was told. Well, how is he going to go measure a temple when it's not even standing? It doesn't exist. Go over to Israel today and find a temple to measure. It's not there. But at the time the book was written, the time that John had his vision, the temple was still standing. It didn't come down until a few more years later. That's one of the evidences for a pre-AD 70 dating of the book of Revelation. And there are many other evidences that you can show. Anyway, so I'll leave it there. And it's been too long already, 43 minutes. It's a long time to sit and listen to me in a chair. By the way, I'm going to try to upgrade these videos. I'm going to try to get, if I can, me on the screen and then the things, me down here and then other things on the screen. And it'll make it a little bit more entertaining for you guys, a little bit better. But I'm running into technical issues trying to get that done. So we'll work through that. It might take me a while, but we'll work through it and get through that and see if we can't make these videos better. So we'll see you again before the week's out. And everybody have a wonderful, wonderful week. I hope everyone is doing well. I wouldn't go into panic mode over anything. Stay calm. Slow the train down. We're not in a rush to get to apocalypse. Slow the train down, folks. Things are not as they seem. Okay. Anyway, everyone have a wonderful day. We'll catch you next video.